One of the biggest challenges today with the Roundup Ready technology is weed resistance. And what has happened over the last 15 years is we're finding that with more applications and higher doses, we're not controlling things like water hemp. As you can see in the background, this field has water hemp escapes in it, even though it's been sprayed 2 to 3 times. And this has really been more prevalent here in 2015 than ever before. And so it's going to force us to look at some alternatives. And the reason why we got weed resistance is, number one, when you hit it with the same chemistry over and over again, or with the same hammer, there's going to be certain seeds out there or plants that have more tolerance. And over time, what you do is you select for that. And so you keep beating it over the head, keep selecting, and then pretty soon you've got a water hemp plant that no matter how much Roundup you put on, you can't control it. Now, why is that a problem? Well, obviously you don't want weeds in your field. And then sometimes we're forced to come in with chemicals that cause more damage from a contact point of view to kill those older water hemps that we didn't control with Roundup. And what's happening with this whole scenario is we're actually causing other problems out here too. Number one, we know that glyphosate is a biocide, and so as we put on higher rates, spray more frequently with the Roundup, we're actually building more of Roundup and its metabolite in the soil that's detrimental to beneficial biology. The other thing is we're tying up nutrients because it's a chelator. And so these are things of real concern. Now, we want to show you a field that had this scenario, and then they came in with a contact herbicide and created a lot of damage in yield reduction. And this field actually was under a lot of stress. And what the grower did here, because he couldn't control his weeds with the Roundup application, he came in with a burned down herbicide, and he just whacked the soybean to the point where it really shut it down. Now, when you look at soybeans, right here at the top, late in the season, if you get rain in August in the Midwest, it'll put on a cluster. That's worth 3 to 5 bushel an acre. You notice on this one here, we don't have it. And so the thing we want to talk about is stresses in soybeans that lead to this here versus this over here. Now, I think excess of tillage, destroying soil structure, burning out organic matter, destroying soil biodiversity, toxicity from pesticides, high salt fertilizers, these are all detriments to good soybean yields. Now, what we want to do is we want to build better soil health and plant health. We want to improve soil chemistry. We want to improve nutrient balance and availability. And we want to make sure that the nutrients get in the plant and are mobile. Now, glyphosate or Roundup has been something that a lot of farmers have used. It's used on most of our bean acres in the Midwest. There's 2 issues with Roundup that's created somewhat of the scenario that we see here today, I think, in the soybean crops across the Midwest. Number one, it's a chelator. And so as the plant tries to access nutrients from below and mobilize them into the plant, when you spray glyphosate essentially ties them up. Glyphosate is built around the phosphate molecule with 3 negative charges. And so anything that's positive, like manganese or zinc, it'll take and attach it and make it immobile. Now the plant hasn't got use of that, and it shuts the plant metabolism down or growth functions. The other thing, it's a biocide. So when you spray the plant with Roundup, it moves with the sugars, and the plant exudates about somewhere around 25–30% of the sugars out of the root to feed the microflora, because there's a symbiotic relationship between the microbes and the plant. And so when glyphosate moves with those sugars out, it dings up the beneficial microbes, including the rhizobium or the nodule forming microbes. So now the plant doesn't have the protection, so the pathogens move in. We ding up our nitrogen fixing, and we screw up our ability to solubilize nutrients. And thus we end up with a plant that looks like this here. Now, because we had weed resistance in this field also, as I mentioned, they came in with a contact herbicide and further shut the plant down. So in the end result is we took a lot of yield out of this field unnecessary. And so we've got to learn out how do we build in to our soils. There are really 2 functional foundational things that we got to understand. Number one is you got to build biodiversity. Number two, You got to balance your mineral fraction in the soil, and you got to make it available. And what allows you to do that are the microbes. The microbes are the solubilizers and the balancers. That's why they go hand in hand. You know, the more we can reduce tillage, the better we can get our residue to turn over rapidly from year to year. Planting cover crops helps build biodiversity. You can sow right into a standing soybean field early in August and have it growing by the time you harvest. Keeping something actively growing on the ground is very important to build soil health and biodiversity. Reducing your salt-based fertilizers. Go to your soft rock phosphate, your mined ores that have potassium, sulfur, and 55 trace elements in it. Use your potassium sulfate rather than your potassium chloride high in salt. And get not only your potassium but your sulfur, the fourth major element that's needed, especially when you're producing soybeans. And then your elemental sulfur is another one you can use. So these are some things you can do along with using good biostimulants. Use biological seed coatings that will get the microbes right on the seed, get the plant off to a good start, and give it seedling and season-long health. And these are some really basic things that won't break the bank that you can do on your farm to improve soybean yields and produce plants that look like this instead of like this.